When I first saw this story, I couldn't help but laugh, and I tweeted about it with LOL in my tweet. Elizabeth Warren has announced she wants to break up the big tech companies. I kind of like that idea. I kind of like that. I don't know if it's necessarily the right thing to do, because what is Facebook and Twitter? Can you really break them up? I don't know. Google, or I should say Alphabet, which is now the parent company to Google, that's a different story. YouTube can certainly be its own company. Google can be its own company. It's very, very complicated, and Google has a stranglehold on the ad market, as does Facebook. But Facebook is just a feed. You know, it's not so much you can break it up. It's just that a lot of people use it. Google, on the other hand, is much bigger and a bunch of different services. So it's complicated. I'm also willing to bet that making this video is going to result in it being deranked and it getting almost no views because, heaven forbid, Tim speaks up against tech monopolies on this platform. But here's what's funny. Elizabeth Warren in this announcement took out ads on Facebook saying we should break up Facebook. What did Facebook do? It took down the ads. I kid you not. We are in the nightmare dystopia. How funny is that? Elizabeth Warren, I am no fan. She has one of the highest negative ratings for any Democrat running in 2020. But having her ad removed from Facebook. Now, someone said to me, Tim, they commented on Twitter, if someone took out an ad on your channel saying Tim Pool sucks, would you accept the ad? And I gotta admit, I probably would. In fact, I'd probably make a point of it. Like if someone said they wanted to sponsor a video on my channel, I'm not really doing sponsorships right now, and it was a sponsorship about how Tim Pool is awful, I may consider it. I may. But think about this too. It wasn't that she was saying they were awful, is that she was saying action needs to be taken. So if someone wanted to take sponsor a spot on my channel where they said, here's why Tim Pool is bad, then I would just push back on the ad and here, thanks for the money. But it is complicated. I mean, I'm under no obligation to run anyone's ads, nor is Facebook. But let's read what happened. And I want to stress too, Facebook is dying. Did you hear that? Millions of young Gen Z and millennial users fleeing the platform. Now, they are going over to Instagram. We can see the numbers, but they've lost something like 15 million users. So do they need to be broken up? I honestly don't think so, because they're dying off anyway, and who knows how long they'll last. But let's read the story. Facebook performed a U-turn after removing Senator Elizabeth Warren's ads calling for breakup of social media giant and Amazon and Google because they have bulldozed the competition and used private information for profit. I think it's important to point out that Facebook didn't remove, well, they're claiming they didn't remove her because she was, targeting them, is because you're not allowed to use their logo in advertisements. But let's read on. Facebook has performed a U-turn after removing Elizabeth Warren's ads calling for the breakup of the social media giant. Warren, who launched the ads as part of her presidential campaign, claimed that the three tech companies had bulldozed the competition and used private information for profit. I mean, that's literally their business, but let's move on. In one of the removed videos, Warren said, "We all use them, but in their rise to power, they bulldozed the competition, used our private information for profit, and tilted the playing field in their favor." True, I agree with that. The ad went on to talk about Facebook's merger with potential competitor WhatsApp, as well as claiming that Google selectively promotes its own products over competitors. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that. The Massachusetts Democrat announced her plans to take on the three companies last week. I don't necessarily know why she thinks that would be the most popular course of action. Now, I absolutely respect Elizabeth Warren for making this call, because I do think there is a threat, particularly with the massive monopolization of tech giants who are unwilling to adhere to American legal standards and norms. At the same time, you don't see a lot of people clamoring for this issue, so I don't know where she's getting her data from, but interesting nonetheless. So we can see this is the ad. It said the ads called for signatures on a petition set up by the presidential contender. She said, "We all use them, but in their rise to power," okay, they're going to repeat the same quote over and over again. Warren's statement on Friday had an immediate impact on the company's stocks. Amazon shares fell 1.5% and Facebook and Alphabet shares were down 0.6% in the morning trade. That doesn't mean her ads did that. We don't know. That seems like a normal fluctuation. The consumer protection advocate is polling an average of 7% support. It is not known exactly when the ads, which called for signatures for a petition to destroy their monopoly, were taken down, but the removal was first noticed by Politico on Monday morning. They were restored later that evening. My tweet, just so you guys know, was seeing that they took down her ads calling for accountability just makes me feel like they should be taken down even more. Here's the reason. Some people have said there's other places to advertise. Yeah, but kind of not really. Facebook accounts for, I think, like 50%, as does Google. If you want people to see the ad on digital where they're most impacted, that's kind of the place you have to do it. Now, they say it was taken down because they used their logo and they brought it back up, but let's read on. More than a dozen of Warren's other ads about the tech proposals were unaffected by the removal. A Facebook spokesperson told Politico that it had removed the ads because they used its logo. They said, "We removed the ads because they violated our policies against use of our corporate logo. In the interest of allowing robust debate, we are restoring the ads and negative backlash and a potential loss to their stock value." Spokesperson Andy Stone told The Hill that Facebook has banned the use of its logo in ads to prevent products promoted by falsely using its name, and I can respect that. Elizabeth Warren said, "Curious why I think Facebook has too much power? Let's start with their ability to shut down a debate over whether Facebook has too much power. Thanks for restoring my posts, but I want a social media marketplace that isn't dominated by a single censor. Break up big tech." There's an interesting conundrum in the big tech debate. We just saw, I did a story about Ben Shapiro and Kara Swisher, where she was actually suggesting the government should regulate against hate speech. I don't know what she's thinking, because the only government regulation that could come down is going to protect the First Amendment, which protects hate speech. If the government did enact a policy on social media giants saying they must control for speech, the only control that could be would fall under the First Amendment, because the government doesn't have the power to enforce that regulation. Basically, if the government said anything about speech, it would be to uphold standards. That's why I'm kind of like, sure, okay, let's regulate, because, listen, as someone who has consistently been social liberal their whole life for the 50 billionth time, if you haven't heard it, when a company gets too big and starts threatening our way of life, be it polluting our waters, be it threatening the speech and discourse of our nation, threatening our democracy, then we must place a regulation on them to ensure this. And the most baffling thing to me is how tribalism is negatively impacting what should be so damn logical. There are many conservatives that say to me, it's about the free market and we shouldn't regulate. And I'm sitting here literally defending their opinion to reject my opinion. It's so strange. Now, I do think it's fair to point out conservatives aren't entirely anti-regulation. They're against many regulations for a lot of reasons. And some conservatives have pointed out to me, simply because they call for regulation in this area doesn't mean they overwhelmingly support regulation. I can respect that. But my mind is blown by so many people on the left who refuse to defend free speech and then cry when their free speech is threatened. And here I am, an individual who supports regulation, saying we shouldn't censor, we should uphold the First Amendment and the legal standards of speech for this country, even if that includes people who disagree with me, be it the far left, the far right, conservatives, whatever. And it tends to be, I kid you not, it's a certain group of conservatives who are like, regulation's bad, man, it's not the answer. And it's liberals rejecting regulation. What happened to the left that they wanted to put a stop on these big companies, these massive multinational billion-dollar corporations with foreign investors who are threatening our democracy? My God, it seems like a no-brainer. When did I wake up in Wall-E world? The left and the right, what are you doing? Now, admittedly, I think most conservatives are in favor of some kind of protection for speech, whether that's regulation or some kind of restriction, whatever. The point is, I think it's fair to most, it's obvious to most people that the left has gone crazy. I don't know how else to describe it. In a response to the news, Warren took to Twitter to accuse the brand of shutting down debate, which we just read. She said one of the removed ads featured a video in which Warren, who is seeking to stand out in the Democratic field of candidates, spoke about Facebook buying out its competitors, including WhatsApp. The clip used screenshots from articles about Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg personally approving the decision to cut off Vine's access to data, and charts showing why the social media giant bought WhatsApp. Beneath the articles, Warren wrote, "And Facebook, it buys its competitors while the Federal Trade Commission sits on its hands instead of enforcing laws to keep the playing field fair and even." That I can understand. So when it comes to breaking up Facebook, perhaps what we're looking at is, Facebook owns Instagram. And even though Facebook is losing out to, this is social media users in general, its stranglehold is dying. Instagram is growing. Facebook, in an effort to stay relevant, has bought its competition and bought the platforms that are growing. They've certainly tried to buy others and failed. We can see that Twitter is having a rough go of it for sure. But Twitter is particularly influential. Facebook, not so much. If we want to break up Facebook and say you can't be Instagram too, well, then maybe that's the plan. All right, let's see. They got any more left here? Oh, they talk about this. Big tech spent almost $50 million in lobbying last year. So this is part of the ad, I suppose. It's time to break up these big companies so they don't have so much power over everyone else. It's a challenge. It is. With the monopolization of certain companies comes convenience. Amazon, for instance, is extremely convenient. But because of Amazon and Prime, we're seeing small businesses go under, and then all of this money is funneled to this massive tech giant, which may be growing out of control. Most of them may be. I don't know what the answers are. I do know the debate is important. I do think that if Elizabeth Warren wants to make this statement, absolutely it is her right. And you got to admit, it's kind of scary when YouTube can shut down certain videos, certain channels, Twitter can ban certain people, and Facebook would remove a sponsored post because she was challenging their authority in this space. So they say on top of her, one of her competitors, Bernie Sanders, has already gone after Amazon to try to get the shipping and internet giant to boost wages. Now, I don't know if that's the answer because we've seen some negative reactions to the rise of the minimum wage, but I do think we need to find solutions to increase the standard of. Here's the thing. It really frustrates me that we've reduced what the left is or the right to simple talking points. Minimum wage, progressive tax. It's like, do you support these things? Listen, I think wealth inequality is a really bad thing. I think it can destabilize economies and societies. And I think a solution to this can be a minimum wage and can be a progressive tax, but only if you check the technology and make sure we actually have these restrictions. So, we'll see what happens. I'm not entirely sure if Elizabeth Warren she actually means any of this, or if she's trying to play up her progressive bona fides. But I'll leave it there. She's made several points. As I pointed out earlier, I'm not sure who's really calling for this, although activists have been to a certain extent. I'm not seeing a big cultural debate over this for the most part. It's not a top priority. But then again, who knows? We'll see what happens. Stick around. I got one more video coming up in just a few minutes. I will see you then.